I recently read about Sonic Mania and how it's receiving an update which is breaking a lot of its glitches and skips, making the game just all around less interesting to speedrun. This got me thinking about the effect that an update has on a speedrun, and how they can influence both the community and the speedrun itself. Anyone who plays modern video games knows the fear of patch notes. While the vast majority of changes might be marginal, there's always something to dislike, and it's easy to hone in on changes that you might disagree with or dislike. However, those who speedrun modern games almost certainly have worse views on patches, updates, and hotfixes. Speedrunners almost always rely on glitches to skip segments, deal extra damage, or to simply have more optimal movement. However, a simple game update or balance change can make previously used strategies impossible or far less effective. In this video, we're going to explore how updates can and do affect runners, discuss downpatching and the confusion that it can cause, and finally, talk about some possible solutions to the issues of updates in general. Updates and patches affect runners in a variety of fashions. However, the end outcome of these patches can often be surprising. The most drastic changes are often those targeted at speedrun glitches specifically. Odds are that if a glitch is discovered in a game, it's discovered by and for speedrunners. This can often make it feel like speedrunners are being specifically targeted by patches, especially when a fairly niche glitch is patched out. While the developer is almost certainly not aiming to make a speedrun impossible, it can often feel this way. Although this is by far the most extreme case and is only applicable in niche situations, a more common example is balance patches. Almost all modern games, whether multiplayer or single player, often have balance patches on a regular basis. While it's easy to assume that since these patches often don't have any drastic changes, they can largely be ignored by speedrunners, in most cases that's simply and ultimately untrue. If a weapon which is being used in a run has its damage nerfed only slightly, to the point where it takes only a quarter of a second longer to kill enemies with it, that can quickly build up over the course of an hour-long run. This issue can become exacerbated whenever you consider that most boss fights work in cycles, where if a certain amount of damage is done quickly enough, it will skip sections of the fight. This means that even a slight nerf to damage can make it impossible to do enough damage quickly enough and drag out a fight significantly longer. Since even a slight change can completely disrupt the pathing and strategy of a run, perhaps it's unsurprising that the vast majority of the most popular speedrun games are those which came out in an era before updates. Games like Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and the Metroid series are all classic, beloved, and popular series, and perhaps this is because they were allowed to keep all the glitches, skips, and exploits that make them so enjoyable to run. Something to keep in mind is that despite a developer's best efforts to remove a glitch, oftentimes the process of removing a skip, technique, or glitch is just as likely to break the game even further. The process of fixing one issue causes another to emerge somewhere else. While this can be quite interesting philosophically, it can often cause a lot of confusion within the speedrunning community. Through downpatching, runners are able to play on older patches, but it's not always wise to do so. While most speedrunners often assume that an older patch is better for speedrunning, as older patches usually contain more glitches, it's important to remember that the quality of glitches is far more important than their quantity. A single glitch which cuts off 10 minutes is as valuable as 10 glitches which cut off a single minute. Things get confusing, however, when patches have similar outcomes but different glitches. For example, what patch would you prefer to run? A patch which has a very difficult and inconsistent glitch that cuts off around 10 minutes, or a patch which has a separate glitch or path that removes 8 minutes comparatively, and which is easily executed. While 2 minutes can either be a massive amount of time or quite minimal depending on the game, my point still stands. When the margins get even more slim, it becomes less and less obvious which is better, especially when you pepper in some other factors such as weapon balance, AI differences, and regional patches. In some cases, using a previous patch is the obvious choice, but the proper course isn't always clear, and in most cases, it ultimately comes down to runner preference. As I mentioned earlier, downpatching is a commonly used fix if an older patch is objectively better for speedrunning, and games with DLC can oftentimes simply not install that DLC while running if necessary. However, not every game can be downpatched, and not every balance patch is bundled with DLC. There's nothing more crushing than having a game that you love to run getting updated and having the speedrun completely broken. Either way, there are solutions to a bad patch, but as we've covered, not all patches are necessarily bad. To be honest, there is no simple solution to the issue of variable patches, game updates, and hotfixes. Ideally, games would be able to be downpatched within the game UI, and while certain distribution platforms such as GOG allow for downgrading easily from within the platform, more common platforms such as Steam or any console stores don't really allow for this option. If downpatching is possible on those platforms, it usually requires a great deal of effort, most of which is not technically legal. It may be somewhat anticlimactic, but in the end there is very little that us runners can do until downgrade integration becomes more common and widespread. If possible, make offline backup files of games that you enjoy and would prefer not to be updated, as that can help preserve the speedrun. But again, it's not always possible. In the meantime, we'll simply have to continue to adapt and figure out what's optimal in an overtly confusing situation. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out this video and my channel. I've been coming down with a bit of a cold, so if my voice sounds irregular, I apologize. If you like this style of content despite that and want to see more in the future, subscribe, as that's the best way to see when I post new content. If you really enjoyed and want others to join in the discussion, feel free to share so others can enjoy as well. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.